I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, Sarah Calgill, Graham Noble, and Dave Patterson. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. It's been about a month since Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared the Freedom Convoy protesters nothing more than a fringe minority filled with racists. They've been called white supremacists, domestic terrorists. The Canadian government has tried to seize money donated to the cause. Frankly, the Prime Minister seems a little terrified of these commoners, and some members of Parliament are getting a bit prickly with him. To make matters worse, the Canadian government is threatening significant financial penalty for anyone supporting the peaceful protest. Overkill much? Well, Breaker 19, we've got ourselves a convoy. Truckers in America are ready to follow suit, planning a Save America cavalcade all the way to the nation's capital in March. Try as they might, the leftist media is attempting to denounce the surge as nothing more than a minority of disgruntled white men. Sheesh, Dave Patterson, where do we go from here? And will they be bringing in the Guard?
Well, I doubt that they'll bring in the Guard, although the Democrats in Washington would love to see that. It's another photo op. But, you know, the point of view there's a problem that they have in the left. And it begs the question, if this is just a minority of disgruntled white guys, how did the protests have the impact that it's had, warranting invoking Canada's emergency powers? You know, this is simply the government largesse gone berserk. These government powers are what you invoke when you have a significant terrorist attack. And I don't think anybody's going to step up and say that the truckers whom we depend upon for our very livelihoods are a terrorist attack. You know, I recommend people look at Andrew Moran's really good piece in the 16 February edition of Liberty Nation. It's a thoughtful description of what's really going on in Canada. And, you know, it was just a matter of time before the U.S. truckers took the White House on for its moronic policies.
Yeah, you know, Jeff, I sort of waffle between laughing and in the unbelief that Canadians are so passionate about liberty, which is great, but they've never really struck me as that way. And what's going on with Trudeau, who seems terrified and is pulling out all the stops. Everybody's now a terrorist in Canada.
You know, I think, and I am very guilty of this, and I've realized this over the past few months, but I don't think we really understand how oppressive Canada's government is, especially when it comes to their COVID regime. If you're going to get Canadians pissed off enough to mobilize like they have, that's an accomplishment, because Canadians are usually, and from my experience, when I've met Canadians, they're pretty laid back, you know, just kind of go with the flow, friendly, whatever. To make them this angry, they messed up. And the fact that their first instinct was to label them as white supremacists and whatever, that told me all that I needed to know. That to me, when they say, oh, they're white supremacists or whatever, what I hear is, what we're doing is wrong. They're right to protest, and this is how we're going to smear them to discredit them. So when they say that, I know that there's probably maybe 4 people who might have had a swastika or a Confederate flag, and then the rest were just people who were just sick of it. So I don't know if this is going to have any impact over the long term, but it does send a message to the rest of the world. I mean, this isn't going to be able to be tenable for much longer.
I mean, Graham, maybe it's just a stereotype, but as Jeff says, I sort of see Canadians and the Australians and the New Zealanders sort of a laid back group. And all of them have been under such a heavy hand of oppression during this COVID thing. I'm not really sure how that connects.
It is actually surprising that, well, I think Canada is, I would say the Canadians are kind of slightly different than Australians and New Zealanders. I've spent a lot of time around Australians and New Zealanders, and I have to say that even though, they're kind of laid back people, but at the same time, they do have a kind of a fierce, I wouldn't say necessarily a libertarian streak, but they do have a fierce streak of, nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to live how I want to live. And it has amazed me more than Canada. I'm not surprised at what's happened. I'm not surprised that the Canadian government has behaved the way it has during this pandemic. I'm very surprised that the Australian government came down with such a heavy hand. That I did not expect. But I would say one thing about, and to me, Justin Trudeau has lost his mind completely. I mean, he's just lashing out in such a childish manner that it's, Canadians should almost be just embarrassed that he's their prime minister. But I would say one thing, because I know here at Liberty Nation, we don't like to indulge in comparisons to Nazis and all of that kind of stuff. And it's never appropriate, I think, in this day and age in the Western world to make such comparisons. And I'm not going to, but I'm going to mention one thing about the few people who may have been waving swastika flags at events like this. I sometimes think it doesn't occur to people that the reason why those people maybe are waving swastika flags is not because they are themselves Nazis, but they are making the point. They are actually making the connection. I think that goes over people's heads. But I think sometimes when these people are waving swastika flags, they're doing it to say our government is behaving like Nazis. Whether or not it's justified to say that, that's the point they're making, I think.
Sarah, is it just me, or does Trudeau seem like a guy who needs a good spanking?
He needs much more than that. I mean, he's acting like a petulant child that has never been told he can't do what he wants to do. And for the first time that I've witnessed, Canadians are going, hey, no, we're going to protest. We're going to tell you what we want to do. They're inspiring other people to do so. And we have a convoy coming across the United States headed towards DC. They're going to be in our area here in the middle of nowhere. Probably March 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. And everybody's raising money and people are just getting on board. It's a heck of a movement. And I think you got to give credit to, those hosers up north who have done this. They're brave, man. They're going, go ahead, seize my income. Go ahead. I ain't moving my truck. And it's, you can't, the visual optics of this, you cannot tell people anymore that it's a bunch of fringe extremists. It's just regular people that are tired. They're tired of putting up with this stuff.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm a little troubled by all this. Everybody's a terrorist if you don't agree with them. The parents are terrorists because they want to have their say at a school board meeting. Now the truckers are terrorists. I'm not exactly sure why, but I just find this very troubling when people, all this talk of domestic terrorism.
Well, it makes sense that you're not sure why the truckers are being called terrorists, because not even the people who are calling them terrorists actually think they're terrorists. They don't know why either. I mean, it's just another word that they're throwing around because they think it'll elicit enough emotions to justify whatever they're doing. And they are trying to justify doing a lot of bad stuff. I mean, we haven't even talked about the media yet. Canadian state-sponsored media is actually listing off the names of people who are donating to the Freedom Convoy. If it's over $40, they list it. And when I found out about that, because Andrew told me, I said, wow, even our media hasn't gone that bad yet. Then a couple days later, I found out that a popular Washington newspaper is doing the exact same thing here in the United States. And that's why, I mean, you know what Trump said about the corporate media. And when I talk about the activist media, that this is proof positive that they are not our friends.
Yeah, and they are more and more activists. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised at the normally easygoing Canadians creating a dust up for liberty. What seems painfully obvious is that Prime Minister Trudeau has never been told no, and he's having a hell of a time handling it. Thanks so much, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, or on the mall. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our member zone, just $17.76 for the entire year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank Diorio, and our executive producer, Sarah Calgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.